All right. We'll have the projector in a second, but I'll kind of start, and we could kind of work from there and kind of go from that. So, all right. Imagine seeing my picture up here saying that I'm a field CTO at Ox Security. My name is Chris Lindsey. I speak a lot. Last year, I was at 25 different conferences, including this one, and we had an amazing time. My talk last year was the dark side of AI, writing unsecured applications in minutes. It's where I went through and built an entire application with AI and talking about the good, bad, the ugly. With today's talk, it's going to be really fun because I'm going to talk about, from a security standpoint, things to be looking for as far as tooling, and make sure that from a security standpoint, kind of arm you with some good stuff to kind of help make sure that things are better. And then we're also going to look at source code. We're going to break down 2 Chrome extensions that were accounted for over 100 or a million plus downloads and installs, stole 100 billion credentials in a 24-hour window, amongst other things. And so we're going to break the code down and talk about it. We're also going to look at Light LLM, which Dwayne's in the room. We talked about last at RSA, and then we'll kind of do some wrap up. So hopefully, projector looks like it's on. All right, almost there. All right, see, there I am. Yay, we got it. All right, so let's start. Wow, that's pretty cool. Let's talk about the agenda. So the agenda, we are going through the introduction, which I'm kind of doing now. We're going to look at trust paths. We're going to do a dissection of the 2 Chrome extensions. We're going to do a dissection of the Light LLM, and we're going to talk about other things. So ask questions. This is meant to be a little bit of interactive because that's the kind of way that I like to have shows. So with that being said, let's start here. So we're going to do a breakdown of common attack vectors. This is where we're starting, the practical framework, and then risk prioritization. Who knows this quote? Does anybody know the band? Rush. Very good. If you choose to not decide, you've still made a choice. I love that saying simply because so often people don't want to make a decision, but by not making a decision, we've still made a decision. So let's talk about why this matters. If you look up here, the majority of all these companies had some kind of breach or some kind of problem last year. And you look at the numbers of how much was stolen, the amount of data, and the different things. And I'm a person that asks, how can we make this better? Why were these guys breached? So let's start with the breakdown of common attack vectors. So on this slide, you can see that we're going to focus on 3: credential, supply chain, and phishing. And also with these slides, I have extra information off to the side. The slides will be available if you're interested. Dylan, could you get me a drink? Thank you. So I'll talk about all 3 of these guys. So let's talk about credentials first. So the credential theft, think of your plugins. So I was just talking about the plugins for at least 2 of the many. But when you start looking at the plugins that are out there and what they're doing, there's so many of those that are malicious. And one of the things that we're going to see when we start going through the source code, we're going to see that some of these malicious ones will pop up ads very frequently. And when those ads come up, people finally get to the point, screw it, I'm going to click it, make it go away. The problem is bad things happen. For us, it's not much of an issue, but for the elderly, 100%. Because, for a great example, last weekend, my father-in-law was like, hey, my phone's not doing text messages. You're out of phone space. Everything was completely gone. And so because it was completely gone, he couldn't even get a text. So I started looking at the applications on his phone, and I'm like, you don't play these games. You don't do all this stuff. I mean, half the stuff there was malicious. And so they click, they go on, and they do it. Of course, we have email phishing, typo squatting, supply chain. That's a massive one. When you start looking at all the different things that have happened recently, supply chain, supply chain, supply chain, supply chain. And we're going to talk about different things that we can do to be better there. DNS poisoning, I learned about this real early on, about 15 years ago with my kids. They were, Dad, something's not working. I have business class firewalls. So I started looking at, why are you going to all these malicious locations? Come to find out, I went to his computer. It was actually, his DNS was overridden and going to malicious sites to do the searches. So it's like, okay, this is not good. So DNS poisoning, and then of course, apps installed from trusted source, which is one of the biggest things that I want to kind of bring up and we're going to talk about today, is because you go to a trusted source and you're thinking, we're covered, we're good. We went to the company itself. We went to the right registry. We went to the right place to get the files. We went to the NPM manager. We went to these places, and why are we still getting hit? And so a lot of things. Supply chain compromise. So nearly every high impact breach involved third-party supply chain vendor. And thanks SolarWinds. That was way back when. And we're still seeing the supply breaches happening more and more frequently, and especially in the light with AI, generating code, pulling random class libraries, random dependencies, that plays into it. So this is just kind of part of it. So the trusted software distribution. I put Notepad LLM at the bottom because their update process had been compromised. And so when you update, then all of a sudden, you're now bringing in malicious versions from the Notepad site itself. So you're looking at it going, but I went and downloaded it from Notepad, of course. So the phishing, the social engineering, part of the social engineering is really about building trust. We see that online. We see that with emails. We see that with everything, but we also see that with everything we download. Like I said, I'm very interactive. So my question to you guys is, think about this. When you download software, any application, what do you guys do? Somebody, anybody? Hash check, good. So security scan, right? What do we do with open source? Do we do anything? I wrote software for 35 years. I ran a security program for a large enterprise for 3. I've seen both sides. I will tell you, developers are quick to say, hey, I found this open source online. I'm bringing it in. It works. We're happy. We move on. Problem is it malicious? Let me ask you guys. When you think of a small dependency or large, how do you build trust in it? Well, at a certain point, you have to rely on your SCA vendor saying, hey, we found something, there's a CVE. But that's only after somebody found something with it. What you could do is, and I'll share this, and I'm going to throw more in as we go, but the thing you can consider or think about is take a version 3 months back, put it in, 3 months, we know that something's good or bad by then, typically. Take the latest copy, do a code diff. Do a small code diff. And if you have a big thing like jQuery, you're going to have it bigger, but at least you're not going back years and years. And so with that code comparison, now you got a good line in the sand current, and then everything is then incremental. And also make sure you pin your dependencies to a known good and run it within your own internal environment, your registry. All right, so let's talk about a practical framework. So again, if you're a leader, a director, or manager, this is going to really more apply to you. But I always do my talks very balanced. In the dark side of AI, my balancing was, talking about security and development I tried to do this with this one, but we're going to get a little heavy in the developer area. But for the security guys, it's amazing because you're seeing the onion pull back on things that you had no idea. So with this one, security teams are asked to do more and more every year, but can't answer the basic question the CEO or CFO asks. What did we actually get? The problem happens if you have a good security program and things are working well, it's quiet. If it's quiet, people are asking, the board of directors are asking, are we getting our value? I mean, we don't see anything. They cut that value back, then they have a breach. So that's inevitable. All right, next one. So most organizations buy security tools the same way they buy insurance, a checkbox. This was really bad in the mid-2010s. A lot of companies were like, hey, I've got DAST, I got Invicti, I got Rapid7, I got some DAST. See, it's on the shelf. Actually, it's in the install folder, just waiting to be used. Too many companies did that, and then when they did their audits, they were like, do you have DAST? Yep. And so they just simply, did it for compliance. The problem is that checkbox compliance has now come back to haunt a lot of those big organizations. So I said I'm going to give you a practical framework, a couple slides for a practical framework. So ask better questions. What threat does this tool application helps us with? What does it do for us? And how likely impactful is it going to be a threat to us? Because you may be trying to cover a threat, but how often do you guys do threat modeling? How often does a developer or security team go in and build a threat model of what they have? I always, when I ran my security program, my rule of thumb was if you fixed a vulnerability, if you fixed a high critical, any kind of vulnerability, but introduced a new one, that's a fail. I have 10 vulnerabilities to start with. I fix one, I introduce one. That changes my threat model because that one that was added could be worse, could be covered, could be mitigated, maybe not mitigated. And so I always say, make sure that when you introduce something, you make sure and think about the threat model. People don't ask, what does the actual cost cost? For example, if I go buy a piece of software, how long is it going to take to implement? How long is it going to take to install, get it up and running, get the coverage I want, get the training and maintenance? When I ran my program, I used an on-prem system. We were healthcare. We were scanning 2.9 billion lines of code per month on my program. And maintenance was manual, it was heavy. And what if the maintenance didn't go well? Which with the product we had back then, were probably 1 in 5 installs, 1 in 5 upgrades. So it was a problem. What's the measurable reduction in risk? So if we buy this tool, we do this thing, what's it gonna do for us? And then what else could we do with that same dollar? A lot of folks aren't thinking about that. They think, oh, we have these tool sets, we have the stuff. We've been running the same things for 10 years. I mean, my program that I started years ago, I still have lunch with the guys. They're running it exactly as I left it, which I'm looking at and I'm just cringing because newer technology's out, different things are out. They're not hitting AI validation. They're not hitting those kind of things, which is critical for success. And acknowledge the hardest part really, at the end of the day, doing the framework correctly requires you to really put numbers down on things that you really statistically have trouble trying to quantify. The probability, we could possibly, the board doesn't want to hear we could possibly. If you're working with the board of directors, you say, look, if we get breached, it's going to be this kind of cost, this kind of thing. This is a small fraction of what it would cost if we get breached. The value of the data, what kind of data are you working with? And so it's not easy, really, it's not really about position. We always called it WAG. Anybody remember what WAG stands for? Wild ass guess. So frequently we would do that. We would, in my development days, hey, how long do you think it would take to write this feature? I don't know, probably 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Man, I think I could do that in 4 days. Yeah, you go for that. We'll see. The first 80% is really quick and then the rest. But really having at least a guess, something to start with, is a starting point, and then you can actually go from there. All right, so the real payoff in the framework isn't really the better spreadsheet. Because really at the end of the day, if I go, hey, guess what? We got a great framework. Here's Excel. No. It's the conversations with leadership. It's the conversations with the board of directors. It's the conversations with developers. How many of you guys run security programs? I know at least one. How often are you very transparent with your developers? Do they know what you run? Do they know the tools? Do they know how your team actually operates? Because if they don't, you're not going to have buy-in. If you have that transparency with them, I got up in front of 800 plus developers every summer, and I talked about, we use these tools for SAST, SCA, DAS. Back then, it was always kind of a cafeteria style. Today, things have gotten better. But really, at the end of the day, when you start looking at it, when I was more transparent, I had better results from devs. So think about that. And when security can say, hey, we prioritized one item over another because it delivers 3 times the risk reduction, now you're able to start working with the board, with the CISO, with the CFO, and moving the needle. So, like I said, I'm kind of developer and security guy heavy. So developers are now saying, what's in it for me? You know, we're talking security, we're talking board of directors, we're talking those kind of levels. And I thought, let's have a little fun. So let's talk about risk prioritization. We'll do some deep dives, talk about some things here. All right, any developers in the room? All right, let's have a little fun. All right, I don't just download any file, I run an antivirus on it. However, when I download open source, I do it freely and push it straight to production. Think about your DevOps pipeline. Are you pulling dependencies dynamically? Are they pinned? Are you pulling from your own registry or pulling from an NPM or some other location? Because too often, I help companies, I'll sit down, even if you don't have our company software. I'll sit down, I'll do DAS reviews, SAS reviews, I'll help you look at what you're doing as a CTO and see what I can do to help you, regardless if you're using this or not. And often, too often, and the reason why I'm bringing it up is because in the DevOps pipeline, they're just downloading everything freely. So let's talk about Trojans. All right, so we're going to talk about this Chrome extension. This one here is a chat AI stealer. Both of these Chrome extensions that we're going to go through account for over 1 million plus and 100 billion credentials stolen. So things we'll see: malicious, deceptive behaviors, user navigation, all that. So, is there anything vulnerable in this? Does anything stand out? A lot of typos. Not only typos, but there's a lot to it. Let me point out some of the malicious pieces. Oh, we've got this. What does this actually do? Deceptive brand impersonation. This extension appears to impersonate or piggyback DeepSeek AI. Because, oh, look, we're going to chat.deepseek.com. That's not DeepSeek AI. That's a malicious endpoint. And so it disguises it. When you look at it, it looks normal. When we look at the update URL, what does this mean? Well, third party. On every update, it calls back to a third-party partner. This is actually tracking and looking at monetization to see if they ever consented. Both of these Chrome extensions did this, and you'll see it on the other one. It pulls up what you think is a EULA, and it says, accept. Well, yeah, I accept. You're not actually doing a EULA. What you're actually doing is you're allowing that browser extension free reign on your computer, free reign to do anything behind you, shadow AI, doing everything in shadow. And that kind of helps get you there. All right, this uninstall redirect. Well, I have the answer up there, but uninstall redirect, because when somebody has you compromised and they know that you've uninstalled it, they know not to come after you. It's not going to be on your firewall. It's going to hide because it's not visibly out there in front of you. And they know how well they're doing. All right, the import. So what we're seeing is literally everything on that first screen was malicious. And this one here, the surface worker load. This one actually did background script for installation update. So this file actually looks benign, but when you start looking at what the service loader does, and it's silently injecting scripts into your pages and capturing everything and sending off every keystroke off, that's a bad thing. So what makes this like a Trojan? Well, this has the pop-up. This has the infrastructure. But again, most firewalls would not pick up on chat.deepseek.com. Some might. I think that domain has now been flagged as malicious. But really, at some point, there's just a lot to it. And really the pattern, when you look at the pattern, the typos, the obfuscation, the fact that it looks legitimate, the things that it's going to, really is what makes that a Trojan. And here, we'll see some of it, signs to look for. So again, look at the typos, look at what it's trying to do. The typos suggest that, oh, somebody was rushing to do this, or they were just a bad typer, or they were international. That's not the case, because security tools are looking for specifics. And I'll actually show security results at the end. And I'm also going to tell you how you can find these and what you can do in your system. All right, so a little bit more. We're going to go in. We're looking at this pop-up click, the response, what's happening. This is actually the consent that I was just mentioning. That's exactly how it's implemented. And so again, when you look at it, it's a pop-up that's like, hey, do you consent to our terms of service? And they have some junk in there. And you're like, yes, I do. Because do we ever read EULAs? No. And any more bad actors can go into ChatGPT and go, I would like a nice EULA that does this. And then there you go. Cut and paste. All right, we're going to hit 2. We're not going as deep in this one or as long, but again, same story, same thing. So what makes this one malicious? This is the Chat GPT for Chrome, GPT-5, Claude Sonnet, and DeepSeek AI. This one was pretty nasty when you look at the fact that it hijacks your traffic. It injects aggressive advertising. Again, this one is the one that's like every 2 or 3 times, ignore, comes back, ignore, comes back. Finally, you go in and say, you know what, I'll accept it. And what it does is outstanding from a malicious standpoint and hard to catch from a security standpoint. All right. I put a lot of information on the slides because really at the end of the day, I figured you will probably want the slides. And so I'll make sure that they become available and you'll have all this that I'm talking about. But why is this malicious? This one allows all URLs. Okay, remember, we did a pop-up, we accepted everything, our terms of service, all URLs. It's seeing every tab. It's seeing every value. It's seeing every aspect of your system and offloading it to a remote server. That's part of the reason why this one is nasty, because this one went multi-tab and caught banks, caught tokens, caught everything, your GitHub, your logins, your credentials for virtually everything. And that's how we ended up with a lot. All right, let's look at this one. Blue pop-up. What makes this one malicious? Well, this one did the traffic hijack and did the redirect. And so we can see the extension, we can see what it was doing. It looks like it's going to ChatGPT. This one is nasty because a pop-up keeps coming up and saying, hey, I've got a better extension than this ChatGPT you're using. This one actually does more for you. More background stuff, this Atopia. And finally, when you say, yeah, I'll do the Atopia, and you install it and accept it, it's now capturing a lot more than just even the background tabs and things by themselves. And it's kind of like a man in the middle, is what that does. This one here, again, still the blue pop-up, we're looking at it. This one is the pop-up that talks about it and the interacts with the developer or the user. This one here is the traffic hijacking still. This one adds the persistent banner. So your developers or users are like, hey, I got this banner that just won't go away. Or I click it and comes back, click it and comes back, click it and comes back. This guy. This one is the advertising, the deceptive stuff. Again, this one pops up. This one does a lot of things for you. This one claims to access GPT-5, but it doesn't. All the background stuff with stolen tokens can sit there and pull against the different models and give the impression that it's active and it's right and it's doing exactly what it should. It doesn't. And I think I've got 2 more slides on this and then we'll move on. So then here, again, what makes this deceptive? This Atopia, it shows up and it's like, oh, look, we're cheap compared to what other things are. So again, it looks authentic. you've got a lot of developers who are probably like, hey, that's great. That's cheaper than what we're paying, except security teams. Oh, that looks great. Except remember, this plugin had, along with the other one, over 1 million installs. So you know this was across the board. All right, last slide going into this area, and then we'll kind of back off a little bit because I've been really deep in code, and I've talked about that. I kind of gave you the warning. This one injects the intrusive advertising again. So this is the code that actually does it, and it says, hey, did we install it? Did we do what we wanted to? And then only hides for 2 sessions and then back. Again, it's just popping up, popping up, popping up. And it's injecting results into your ChatGPT or whatever AI you're using. It injects stuff for you. Good, bad, ugly. All right. So what I did here is I wanted to be a little funny and say, all right, honestly, we could do this all day. That's the, Captain America. And honestly, the Star Wars, move along. Let's get off of this and show a couple of other things. I want to talk about 2 things that you can do. Being where I work, I have access to this for free, so I'll show it to you. But honestly, you can do this with any tools, your check marks, your snakes, your black ducks, anything. I took both of these Chrome extensions and I put it into our system and I said, scan them. Just so you know, Chrome extension of CRX is nothing more than a zip. If I unzip it, I now have all the files and I can actually use any kind of scanner to scan it. So this one, the top one is the first one I showed you with 1 high, 3 mediums, 11 lows. We have 3 mediums, 9, and 3. Do you think it caught all the problems that we saw in the system? And just so you know, I do have access to the other ones. I just don't have a license. I was able to get friends to do it for me. They all did the same thing. One of the things that you can do, and I know some companies do it, they come up with this is only, and we talked about last night, these are only the extensions that we allow, only the browsers we allow, lock it down. That's one way. Another way, AI is your friend, because what AI can do for you that a lot of people don't think. I'll ask, has anybody done this? Because I'd love to know. Has anybody taken an extension, put it into source code, taken AI using Cursor, point it to that source code and ask the question, why is this malicious? Anybody in the room? Guess what? It works. It gave me a lot of information. Now, we published, as our company, both of these Chromes, and we were the company that got it out of the Play Store, the Chrome store. And we brought light into it. We had articles in Forbes and other places, but the reality is these go unchecked, unnoticed all the time. So if you're whitelisting or allowing specific extensions, do that. Pull it down. Ask, why is this malicious? And if it is, it'll come back and actually give you pretty good detailed. Because that was one of the things that I wanted to do was, what did our security guys find versus what did I find? And I did it separate, and then I looked at what we did versus them, or what I did, and it matched. But they found more too. All right, Light LLM. How many people were impacted by this? Show of hands. Anybody impacted? Does anybody know how deep Light LLM goes down the rabbit hole? I don't think a lot of people do. Light LLM is used for so much today in a lot of applications that a lot of folks actually don't realize that it's actually being utilized and used. And so I'm going to kind of do a little bit of a deep dive talking about it, but your agents, your tools, your LLM APIs, anything that you do there uses Light LLM. That's the reason why I'm bringing this up. And this was pretty massive at RSA. So one of the things that's kind of funny, and I included it in here, the team that came out with it whined online, actively said, why isn't anybody coming and saying, hey, hats off, or whining about how much damage we did and all that? Actually, it was quite quiet. Here's some of the things that they asked. They said, and it's really kind of, when you look at the fact that they're saying these and they're mentioning these, you know that it's kind of, in my mind, childish behavior. Because anybody that does something great and massive is not going to go out and advertise themselves and say, hey, don't you like it? Come on, we made an impact. Now, so let's talk about the dropper, how it was unpacked, the stenography, the injection, and the C2. I said that I had developed software for 35 years. I'm going to share a fun story. Back in the early 2000s, I worked at Quest Diagnostics Laboratory. I worked with a lot of nerds, a lot of geeks, both older and younger. What we would do occasionally is find ways to send messages back to each other, encrypted, different ways. And we'd send it in hex and binary and IBM ePredict and some of the other ones. And I actually would do, from time to time, take a graphic like a JPEG and insert in my own message as bytes in there to replace. And it was always kind of fun because if I did a big enough image, you couldn't really see that I had done that. So let's talk about the dropper. All right, so base 64, a lot of your firewalls will catch this, your tools will catch this, but your developers typically, if they're looking at it, goes, oh, that looks encrypted, and forget it. The system looks at it, and you can see the stenography coming up on the next slide. You see the stenography up here in the core, and you see the fact that this is the image that they were using. The image by itself, your firewalls and any of your security tools are going to look at it and go, it's a bad file. It's a misaligned file. Something's not right, but it still kept enough of the bits and pieces that it continued to pass as a legitimate file, even though it wasn't. And back like I was talking about when I was young, this is how they did it. They came in, they replaced the red byte, the green byte, the blue byte, left the alpha. That way they could tell how exactly did it work, what were they doing, and so they would read it, bring it in. That image is a malicious payload that walks right in the front door, unannounced, and then turns into being something much bigger because they read it, they dropped it into a binary file, and then executed it. So it just all walked right in. The ghost of the machine. So when you start looking at it, you have your injection, there's the DLL host because it's trusted. That's how they ran that process that they took the file. And that's the information over on the right-hand side, some of the information that it had. The dynamic API hashing, so they went in and to evade the static code analysis, the SAS, the injected DLL. They came in and they did a lot of this stuff. They signed it, they made sure it was signed, it looked right, the code looks okay. Everything checks out, quietly walking right in. And then they established their command and control backend. And with that, they were able to get that connection. And then once you get that connection, you know it's hard to break. And it's hard to actually identify because it's an outbound connection to different endpoints that change. So with this, here's the defense. Here's kind of the high level, the details behind it. What do? You have packages, pin the packages. If you always take latest, the problem with latest is you don't know what you're bringing in. If you do take the latest, because the developer in me says, always keep your dependencies up to date, make sure that when you do that, you put it in a 2-week hold, put it in a sandbox, monitor where it's going, what it's doing, what it's talking to, and play with it there, and get to the point where you're like, we're good. I'm happy with it. Your security team can do one last check with SCA. We're good. Put it in your dev environment and play with it there. And then let's see what else. Do key rotations. I talked about it today. I talked about last week on LinkedIn. I talk about things all the time on LinkedIn. With everything that has happened, please rotate all your keys. And I mean all your keys. There is a database right now with over 300 billion tokens that was fresh about a week and a half ago from Light LLM. 300 billion. And so when you look at all the things that were happening, it's pretty impressive. As a matter of fact, one of my friends is in the room. We were at his booth, and he had a screen that was showing how many active attacks were going on at that moment, right? So it was not just like, 100 or 200 or 1,000 or 200. It was like ballooning up fast. And then, of course, make sure that you are checking for command and control, block malicious URLs. So that's just common ground with firewalls. All right, next steps. What can we do here, right? So I kind of talked about it. Make sure that when you download software, you're always scanning it. If it's a library, do your due diligence, like Hugging Face. When you download from Hugging Face, people, if they're like, hey, this thing is malicious or this thing is not right, they're always going in there and putting in things so that you know, hey, I downloaded this, I tried it, I don't think it's right. You look at the Hugging Face, you look at the things. If you look at stars and likes, the problem with the stars and likes, bots. Bots will bounce that number up and make it look official. And so it's tricky. When you're looking at the open source, do the 2-week thing, do the comparison. That's helpful. The validation, make sure that it's right. And again, pull the extension, pull the things. Use your cursor, your cloud code. Ask it, is this malicious? And it'll be interesting to see what you get. Threat models are built in conference rooms, age poorly. I've been in a lot of conference rooms where we built, hey, here's our plan. So if we get attacked and this happens, I can bring out my documentation that says step-by-step how to remediate. But when you do your threat modeling and you do it there and you're like, hey, I guess, no, threat modeling, look at code, look at the different things. Again, if they have a vulnerability, they fix it and introduce a new one, block it. Have QA see the security report and block it. And that's it. I post every day on LinkedIn. I talk about things frequently. Please feel free to connect in, send messages back and forth. And I hope that for those who are developers, you enjoyed looking at the malicious part. For those who are security guys, looked at it and go, wow, I've never seen code like that. And I hope that everybody got something out of today's talk. So with that being said, any Q&A, questions, thoughts before we go on? You can always hit me up in the hallway too. All right, thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it.